Hi to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Today we are going to deep dive on data contracts and data governance. I'm here with John Thomas from Volvo Cars and Kjetil Eritzland from Capgemini. Do you want to introduce a bit of yourself, John?
Yep. Thanks, Paolo. Myself, John. I'm working as a staff engineer at Volvo as a data platform, working in and out on data contracts. Also, why I'm standing here just because I know more about data contracts. I'm the one of the guy who did the technical review of the FES book on data contracts by Andrew John, the data quality by data contracts. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Kjetil Eritzland. I work for Capgemini, as was said, but in addition to my day job, I'm also the board of DAMA Norway. And for those of you who don't know, DAMA is an organization for the improvement of data management practices, and for our case in Norway, then, so data governance is definitely something that's close to my heart.
Good. I'm Paolo Platter. I'm the product manager of Witboost. Witboost is a data experience platform that let you introduce, enforce, and adopt new practices in your organization, like data contracts, data mesh, and what will come in the future. Today we will talk about data contracts, but before to start on this specific topic, I would like to set a common ground regarding governance challenges. So, John, can you highlight what was the major challenge in governance at Volvo?
Yeah, we have a whole lot of governance issues, like most of you. First of all, it's like, yeah, the pipelines just failed because of source changing something. Of course, there is always a mismatch between metadata and the real data itself. We have, of course, we have the quality issues because the number of validations or business validations on data quality is not really good enough. And yeah, we have the data. There's no real data owners just because either there will be some names associated, but it's not a full-time job. But so there are a lot of data governance issues. Yep, thanks.
What about you and your customer?
Yeah, one thing is the customers, but as I said, I'm on the board of DAMA. And in DAMA, we have a framework called DMBOK, a data management framework. And there are several definitions of data governance, but one is that data governance is about doing the right things. And then the question becomes about how do we ensure we do the right things? And of course, you could have documents, processes, checklists, audits, but it doesn't really help. And in my experience, documents become stale. People forget that the checklist even exists, and the process is not followed. So we end up with something kind of like documentation for computer programs that is not really followed. So we need something more. So in what I believe then is that data governance needs to be operational. It needs to be part of the development process, not something on the side, which I see it far too often is.
Very good. A lot of people are talking about data contracts, implementing them, and so on. There is also a lot of confusion about what a data contract is and how it should be implemented. So maybe I want to ask you, what is your definition of data contract? What is it?
That's a really interesting question because whenever I try to explain data contracts, it goes in the opposite way. So how I see data contracts is mostly like it's a codified contract. That means it's on code. And what it comes, with whom it's between two parties, two developers or two teams. That one is a producer of the data, and one is the consumer of the data. And what it should have, I normally say it's like 3W and 1H, what, where, and when. What kind of data, from where it's coming up, when it's coming up, typically, and how it's coming. These kind of details has been written on in a code, in a codified way, and keep it. And this is kind of an agreement between two parties. And we try to validate these agreements every now and then and make sure that we get really good data from the source to a destination. Thanks.
I believe John summed it up pretty well. So I would say, formally a data contract is an agreement between a consumer and a producer. It's about what is the quality of what to deliver and what are the restrictions on consumptions of that data. But I would like to add two things at least, that it, as John said, it should be machine readable. but it also needs to be active, because if it's not active, it's not part of the process. It's still something out on the side. Even though it's in YAML, you can read it, but you still need to do something to make sure it's an integral part of the development process and still not something on the side, only in YAML instead of Word.
Good. So we can say that it's not just a documentation or collaboration tool, but it's something that is really entering in the developer lifecycle, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about how the introduction of data contracts can or already solved governance problems in your organization?
Sure. So like we mentioned, like the things that could have on a data contracts, first of all, is like the basic fundamental informations, like who is the owner, from where this data coming up, and how it's coming up. So these fundamental details gives you like whom you need to, who is the data owner, from where it's coming up, such kind of details. Of course, another important part of contract is schema. So if source, the biggest thing we have to understand is like source can't really change the schema without an approval, which is formal approval from the consumer side. So the consumer team have to give an approval on a GitHub, for example. If you are implementing on a GitHub, the PR process has to happen with the schema. Then only we should be able to change something from the source. Else the validation fails, and it says like, source, this is not what we were expecting in our contract. We agreed some days back. So we reduce a lot of source schema change problems, like removal of columns or changing the data types, so on and so forth. Of course, a lot of data quality checks could be implemented. It's been there, and we have a clear idea what the SLOs are when it coming, how much data which should happen, so on and so forth. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, John. So in my experience, I know someone recommends, and many recommends, that you start small, you start with something in Word format, you evolve from there. But from what I see in my clients, at least, that thing in Word format, which is temporary, tends to stay. And you're stuck with something, and you kind of have a data contract in place, you kind of have a process, and it makes it harder to move to the right next step. So my recommendation would be to immediately, or as soon as possible, look into how can we make our data contracts machineable? How can we make them active, a part of our CI/CD process and not something on the side? I see too many failed data governance initiatives. Actually, I think most data governance initiatives fail, unfortunately. And I think it's because that you often establish a data governance team that is on the side writing documents, and you have a data engineering team that does the other work, right? And sometimes they talk together, but often the talking together is in the form of, here is a new set of processes you need to follow. And it's not really, an effort is never really made to make this an integral part, something that you actually understand and you want to follow, or even more, you are enforced to follow the process.
Good. Let me highlight something more. I think data contracts are a practice that you can wire on top of your technologies and platforms, but it's something that must be spread across the entire organization. Once you are able to spread this practice, you can enhance a lot of governance processes. So you can enhance your metadata curation process, the data quality implementation, the pipeline orchestration, because service level agreements are foundational for data contracts. Also, data privacy and security traits can be enforced before going in production. So the shifting left of all these duties in the developer lifecycle, thanks to the data contracts pattern, it's something that can really, really improve the overall governance effectiveness of a company. I'm curious, you know, practice adoption is hard, especially in large organizations. So in your opinion, what is the best way to introduce data contracts in a complex organization? And I know you already done this part, so if you can provide some.
Yep. My biggest piece of advice is like, don't try to have a big data contract with a lot of validation, everything from the start, because it's really hard to get adopted. You have to think a lot about the change management. So try to have the most simple ones with like fundamental schema, data qualities, all those things, and get introduced this to the data engineers, because if you bring a bigger ones, soon you will get a backfire from your developer saying like, it's too much of work. I already have a lot of work on my plate. I won't blame the data engineers because they are in the hot seat. So try to make it as simple. And second biggest advice is like, try to implement on a critical project. Then they will really appreciate how much value it has produced to create a good quality data. These are the two things I would say. Yeah, gradually you can really build on top of it. And like Paolo said, you can have the trades, you can try to you drive your architecture through contracts. And speaking about this more in my next section, but you can do a lot of things, your contracts. It's more powerful, but you don't try to do it from the day one. You take a step back and do it. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, John. As I said before, I think even if you start up with a Word document, it's important to integrate it into your development processes. And what I've done with some clients is at least to introduce quality gates so that you check that the things that you should have done according to processes has been done. It's not the best of process, but it starts at least to give the data engineers the feeling that there are some principles they need to adhere to. And in the end, what we want to achieve is quite simple, or not simple to do, but simple. It's about getting data of high quality, well documented, well understood, out to the customers, and also to make sure data are not used in ways they shouldn't be used. And all of things can be done with a data contract, not saying that you should do all of them at once, but at least start introducing the data contracts as part of your general CI/CD process. Start making the data engineers think more about, which they often don't do, think more about the usage of the data products, not only the production of them. And as I said, it could be as simple as quality gates, but one of the things that led me to Witboost was that I saw that this isn't a good enough process, nothing really enforcing you. Even if I called the gates, one of your peers will say this looks okay, but it's hard to make sure you have checked all the boxes, like was shown here before in the presentation was Scania, for those of you who were there. So we were looking at one of our clients into how can we do that, and we started looking at, okay, we want to have it machine readable, we think YAML is a good format, but what then? And then we saw that there's a lot of work actually that needs to be done, because if your data contract has SLAs saying that this is a schema that you can expect to get the data, we must have some way to validate that the data we deliver is in that schema, and also we need a process that handles when things break. If we say that we want to deliver data with certain level of quality, we need to be able to discover that, and also a process to handle exceptions to that. And that means you need to integrate with your data quality tooling, you need to integrate with your data integration tools, you need to integrate with a lot of with your data catalogs and a lot of tools in your stack. And at least our discovery was that this was quite a heavy undertaking, and we weren't sure if you were really in the software development business, and started looking for a tool. And that's when we discovered Witboost, that actually had a lot of these things that we were looking for.
Thanks. Yes, the introduction of a new practice in large organization, it's always requiring new effort for people, for data practitioners. So my recommendation is when you introduce a new practice, whatever it is, data mesh, data contracts, or whatever, try to reduce the cognitive load that is required by all the people in your organization to enter in the new practice. So when you introduce data contracts, it's super important that you can automate the life cycle of data contracts from a platform standpoint. So it means that you need to facilitate the creation of data contract, the deployment, the enforcing, the monitoring, and also the change management life cycle of these data contracts. So if you are able to provide a good level of automation in all the phases of data contracts, then this will reduce the cognitive load for people, because otherwise they will see like the data contract like yet another things to do on top of all my duties in my daily activities. So the platform role to introduce a new practice is fundamental. Good, we talked a lot about the value proposition of data contracts, the improvements that can bring into the governance space, but in your experience, did you see any drawbacks or challenges, why people maybe are pushing back them, so any kind of negative traits of data contracts?
Yeah, like I mentioned, like it has to be in like Paolo said, like it shouldn't be something like it's additional work for the developer. We have to understand what is this all about. It's not really an alternative for catalog, because some of the information you capture in catalog contracts will be there in catalog. So try to make sure that there is an integration between contracts and catalog, so that all the information you get here is being pumped to the catalog as well. So in that way, you can reduce some of these things, the information, some of these informations taking into different places. Also, like, one other thing probably, like I mentioned again, like you try to just have minimal information. What we do is like, as from a central team, we'll give, say like, this is a set of information that is mandatory. And for the domains, they can just extend contracts to their level. And for the projects, they can have, again, extend. So introduce it based upon the maturity of the company and how things has been taken up. And you shouldn't really go with a big bang approach, because that's also something backfired us. Yep, perfect.
I think I'll answer a different question than yours, Paolo. So what we see often is data governance doesn't always have a good reputation. It's hard to see what is the business value, hard to assess, hard to estimate. The reason for my client that we started looking into data contracts was that we saw that the concept of a data product is very hard to understand, also for data engineers, because it's the data, but it's also the process of producing the data. It's documentation that needs maybe resides in a data catalog. It's a quality measurement in a data quality tool. All this together is what is a data product. So it's not only a table or so. And we saw that there was an added cognitive load, and developers struggling to see that, and often they fall back to think of data product. That's just the table or the set of tables. And that is what led us to this journey, and also that was the business case. So if we can make it easier for the developers to see a data product as a whole, something you can treat as a unit rather than bits and pieces here and there, that would, we believed, decrease the time spent in creating a new data product. And that's where our journey led us to data contracts. We had data contracts in Word format before, but we lacked something that could describe all the different pieces of a data contract, of a data product, which we believe was a data contract then. Paolo?
Thanks. So if you want to discover a bit more about Witboost, we are at booth A24 on the main entrance. Thank you so much for joining. We are also on time, so we made it. Thank you so much.